please welcome the incredible Amanda Delosa.
So great to have you here. Welcome to Australia.
Yeah, and welcome to my first in-person for Into the Wild. This is amazing.
Yeah, I feel very, very honoured to be here.
Yeah, me too. This is very special. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, so I am an entrepreneur. I'm also a wife and a mother, so I wear all of the hats. My career has stemmed from working in politics as a media and communications advisor, both federally and state. Did that for many years before stepping out on my own and starting my own PR and branding agency. So we have that in common. And I've been doing that for a number of years now, working with predominantly young entrepreneurs, company founders, helping them grow their brand online and doing all of the usual PR things. But yeah, going through a major life change in the last sort of 3 years and becoming a mother, moving to Sydney, marrying Jack, has brought about so much change, but opportunity to reinvent myself and then pivot into the next phase of what I'm going to be doing going forward, which we can talk a little bit about today.
Yay. Okay, so PR, I mean, that's my world.
Yes.
So how'd you get into that?
So I actually was traveling back from Europe and I had a bit of an epiphany. At the time, I'd been working in real estate sales, administration, property management, and I was coming back from traveling as an adult for the first time. I was around 24 at this point. And I love travel so much, and actually was so sad to be coming back to Australia. And I thought, gosh, if I could do anything, I would love to be like a travel journalist. So I went to university and enrolled in a Bachelor of Communications, did a double major in journalism and public relations. And from there, I kind of imagined myself being a host on Getaway. But I remember one day they asked everyone in the auditorium, you know, what job do you guys want to go for? And literally everyone's hand went up for this job as a host on Getaway. So I realized that was probably not going to be ideal. We also talked about whether or not we would go into journalism or public relations. And for me, the thing that was most scariest about journalism, other than the wage, was having to, you know, potentially speak to people in really dire circumstances, the old death knock, you know, that sort of thing. I thought I'm not cut out for those conversations. So PR was definitely the route for me. And about 6 months out from actually finishing my degree, I did a lot of volunteer work, and I was in a role at my local Surf Life Saving Club as a publicity officer. And we had a member of parliament come along to our awards night. And it just so happened that she was looking for a media advisor, and I was invited to come in for an interview. So I still hadn't finished my degree, but I thought, you know what, I'll get my foot in the door. If worse comes to worse, I start working and I can finish my degree online, which is what I ended up doing. And then I entered the world of politics. My first week in politics was in Canberra, and it was budget week. So it was baptism by fire.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, but great training. I never really loved politics. I wanted to be in politics, but I saw it as a really good opportunity. And throughout my, you know, career in politics, you know, it was my job to basically coordinate the media press conferences and tours for prime ministers and ministers. So I met and worked with a lot of, you know, incredibly powerful people. And it was through those experiences that I started to interact more with small business, because we'd go out, we'd put on the hard hat and the high vis vest, and we talked to small business. And they had so many great stories. They didn't know how to tell them. They weren't sharing things on social media. So I kind of found myself in this love role of just like mentoring them and giving them tips and advice on how they could do that. And then eventually I realized that's where my heart was, wanting to work with small business and use my power for good rather than evil.
Right. And so you became a storyteller.
Yes.
So my first foray into PR was by chance. I started an agency that did mostly content marketing and social media, and partnered with a woman who did PR for funded technology companies. And we started doing projects together, founded an agency. And then when we had our second year in business, we did like a deep dive into our financials to really understand which service actually was the most profitable. And it was PR. So we got rid of everything else and we just went full on public relations. I ran this agency for 7 years without even pitching the media a day in my life. I had a team for that.
Yeah.
And then this agency that I just sold, which is so cool, I did all the work. And it is a grind. It is probably actually one of the toughest industries to work in. You're like put up right against what it means to be like in service as like a police officer or in the army as a surgeon because of the stress. What about it did you love so much? I
think, well, as entrepreneurs, we always say that, there's there's some truth to that. It's a trauma response that we end up in this space. We like to keep really busy. We like to be challenged. And I think with PR, it is something that it's every day is a challenge, and you always are fighting to get, that press coverage for clients. When you do that, it's so amazing to get those wins. I think it's very good in terms of the dopamine hit that you can get in PR. And yeah, I guess the storytelling aspect is also really powerful, and being able to help people tell their stories. But yeah, I think getting the wins, like just having wins all week long for clients, but also helping them build the confidence up to tell their stories and feel more empowered within themselves too. I found a lot of my clients kind of almost felt like they were on some kind of a spiritual journey, like working with me, because they really got to know who they were, their voice, what mattered, their talking points, like what they could speak to. And that's really empowering for them too. So it's like being able to even help from like a growth and a personal development point of view with clients in PR, I found to be really rewarding.
So you're now talking about stories. There's a question that we worked on before that I really enjoyed, because it's leading to something you and I are sharing in this part of our life right now, is this like radical reinvention. So for someone listening who feels stuck in their current season of life, whether personally or professionally, what would you suggest as the first step toward creating a future that excites and fulfills them?
The first step is to be able to envision it, and to be able to create an idea and to look towards a future where you are actually living a life that lights you up. And a really cool, like actionable tip for listeners today would be to go away and actually list out like how they would like their ideal life to look. Generally, it's good to do like maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But anyway, write down all of the things. I did this in a dream journal about 7 to 8 years ago. And recently when we were packing up to relocate, I found it. And then at the same time, I had seen this trending reel on Instagram that was talking about a ChatGPT prompt where you could go in and you could literally list out how you wanted your ideal life to look and ask it to then generate a story of how that looks. And for me, what I found really interesting was if I entered all of the journal prompts from 7 to 8 years ago, the story that it spat out was literally the story that I'm living today, which is crazy.
Did you write in the journal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and you put that all into ChatGPT?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was things like, I would love to be living in Sydney. I would love to have a harbour view. I would like to drive a Range Rover, which I do. Yeah. I would love to find a partner who is a life partner that I could have children with. I want to travel the world. Like, it was just ridiculous. Like the things that we listed out. So what you're saying,
if you put your dream into ChatGPT, that will come to fruition.
Yes, it's just one step, basically. Yeah, the ChatGPT is very, AI is obviously very, very powerful.
It is. So then you put this in. So I've used it. I use Claude for this, where I'll take pictures of my writing and I'll say, turn this into a transcript. And it actually puts it, it's really cool. So you don't have to like double type it in. So you put all these things into a prompt. And it essentially designing a life for you?
Yeah, it will basically give you a blueprint of your life design.
Okay.
If you're asking for it to
But then what do you do with that?
Well, then you hold to that and you know that that's what it looks like. Like you feel into that. You know that that is something that, it's not like The Secret where you just like imagine something and it appears. Like you obviously have to put the work in.
Yeah.
And so I definitely put the work in. I went through some major life changes to get here, and I've always worked so, so hard for everything that I have. And it paid off. Like in the background, I always knew that this is a life that I was going to have. But I guess every day I was making intentional steps to get towards it. Maybe not sometimes even realizing that I was actually traveling that direction. But when I look back, I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Like the power of manifestation is very real when combined with action.
Let me tell you a little story about something that just happened. My friend Yali works directly for Tony Robbins and Sage. And she went to like a UPW event, You Unleash the Power with them. She was walking into this room of 10,000 people. She was late, and she was like, found this chair close to the front of the room, and they were doing some sort of activity where you could win something. It was like this contest. It was like not truth or dare, but something like that. And it's unlike her to volunteer, but she was late. And as Tony was saying, hey, who wants to participate? She threw her bag down, and it's kind of like she said to herself, oh, I'm going to win. It wasn't like I'm just participating. Oh, I'm going to win this. And sure enough, she wins the whole thing. She's like, I felt like I was going to win this thing. So then all of a sudden it's like this natural course happens because you know what the end result is going to be.
Yep.
When you look back at your AI designed life, I do this every year around this time of year with like a vision board. I fail at this, looking at a lot of the things on there, some things I've achieved. What do people do when they have this beautiful design of their life and they start to see themselves like falling behind? Like for me, for instance, a perfect example is I have this woman who has like the nicest butt in the world. It's like, I want to have this ass by the time the year is done, but I haven't achieved it yet.
Yeah.
There's other things in there. So what do people do when they recognize like this is the design of the life they want, but they're not actually doing anything to achieve it?
I think the first step would be to actually spend some time really considering like why that's the outcome, like meditating on it. Like if you really, really, truly desire something and want it and it's a priority, then you make time for it. And so sometimes it might be that you want it, but do you really want it bad enough? Or were there other things that were competing for that priority and that time? And we spoke about this a little bit earlier about doing a time audit and sort of understanding exactly where like all of your time is going. And so for me lately, what I found is a really powerful tool as I'm kind of going through the next life, design, is seeing exactly where all my time is going and seeing if I can start pinching some from like one quadrant and putting into the other. So for example, I track the time that I spend with my daughter caring for her. I track the time that I spend in solo time and doing things that rejuvenate me. I track the time that I'm socializing, and then I track the time that I'm spending on life administration and home maintenance and all the rest of it. And it will give me a pie chart where I can actually see like the most perfect breakdown of where it's going. And it's in colors and everything. So you can see this like balance, and then you can actually redirect some of that time into what you're wanting to achieve. So for me, like I've just recently started working with a PT again after, since having Ariella, and I did my first session yesterday, and first 10 minutes was so rough and I thought I was going to die. But I also want to build like a lot of muscle. So it's become like a new intention for me to focus on that. And how I've gone about that is looking at how I can allocate the time and then locking it in the calendar. So it's every Tuesday and Thursday. I think sometimes if you really want something, it is very useful to have someone somewhere to hold you accountable for it. So
my assistant, 100%.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though. And I think you hit on it, there's the desire for something you want to achieve in your life, but also there's the subconscious thing that especially women do, where they put on their vision board what others expect of us.
Yes.
And I think when that happens is where we fail, because it's not necessarily our desire. How can we look at that and be like, that's a F yes or an F no? And then if it's an F no, but there's other people that expect you to be doing this thing, how do you get past that?
So much of this is self-awareness, right? And we were talking about this before we recorded about like kind of waking up at some point in your life and feeling like you're not connected to yourself. And for me, it was like I didn't really know what my needs were. I felt like I'd spent most of my life up until 35, performing for others and doing what others expected of me. And I would feel good so long as I was making everyone else feel good, which would mean, yes, doing what everyone expects of us. But it takes a moment to kind of go through, and it's a whole healing journey of kind of reconnecting and coming back to yourself, which for me, it's taken a couple of years. Like it's not an easy thing to do. They liken, like coming back to yourself as like growing up as a child, but as a child you have so much energy to do it, whereas as an adult you're already depleted, particularly as a mother. So yeah, it's a self-awareness thing first and foremost.
Yeah, that's the toughest part.
Yeah.
Because I think like our ego's like, oh, that's what people want or expect of me. Or this is what I need to do because I'm a mother and society expects this of me. Yeah. And you and I have probably broken a lot of expectation rules in our life, especially who you are. And then you have a younger child too. I got so much backlash that my kids were going to daycare full time when they were 4 and 5 weeks old. And that was so painful. I got comments about I didn't breastfeed long enough or I didn't do all these things with my kids. It still weighs on me. But it's also not what I desired. I didn't desire all these things. I desired growing my business. I desired doing something that went against the grain. How do you have those conversations with people that are telling you that's not how things are done?
Well, I think it predominantly comes down to if people are tormenting you by saying that you're not doing things their way or the way that society expects it to be done, are they really people that you want in your ear? Like you kind of have to almost distance yourself and find a new tribe and a new group of people that actually understand what it's like to actually want to be more than just a mum, you know, and some people really love that role of being a stay-at-home mum. Like that's what they're built for. That's what they desire, right? But for us, we want so much more, and we bite off more than we can chew, and we're constantly trying to make it all work. So I think the biggest key to, you know, being able to, you know, accomplish that or complete that would be by having the right kind of people around you. And really you have to start stop listening to that noise and that judgment and that shame. Because there's a lot of people like us out there. It's just like, you know, like how do we find each other to support each other in having a different vision and living life in a different way.
And they make you second guess it too. Like, I know that you guys have a unique relationship because you're both entrepreneurs. Dan and I, same. Yeah. And how we approach life is different. It's not right or wrong. We're not comparing ourselves to other people. But even when it comes to relationship dynamics, like there's a lot of expectation that we show up 50-50. 50% in the household, 50% at work, 50% income, revenue generating, wealth creation. It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. And I actually remember Jack having the conversation with me after he first came back into work when we had Ariella. So because, you know, he can choose, you know, how much time he had off as an entrepreneur. That's one of the luxuries we have, is we can, you know, choose our time. He took 4 weeks off with me when Ariella was first born, so that we were at home together in that newborn bubble together, which was amazing. When he went back to work, he said to me the day before, like, how do you want to approach this? Do you want to go 50-50 with caring for her? And I literally looked at him and I said, that would be so stupid. Like, you're the stronger entrepreneur out of the two of us. I've just had a baby. Like, it makes more sense for you to go and do that, and I will look after her and I will support you, because it's a better outcome for our family. And I mean, you've got to understand like what season you're in, and you work as a team and you play to your strengths, and you certainly do not look at statistics or data or 50-50 splits and go, well, that's how it's meant to be, because that would be an absolute disaster for us. Like, we would have gone backwards. Like, life wouldn't have been as great. Yeah, exactly.
And then you would have been resentful. Well, my husband wrote the book, Buy Back Your Time. No, everything's a joke. Like, buy back your efforts, buy back your... Anyway, what I realized in all of this too, that the lesson is in the book is for entrepreneurs in how to really understand the wealth of your time. But it also showed up in our family life. And it was a unique dynamic because there was pressure saying, oh, why does Dan travel so much? Why isn't he home more often? Why isn't he participating? He doesn't do a thing around the house. And that was really tough for me, because I grew up in a household where both my parents literally did 50-50. It was like one person was driving us to soccer practice, the other one was picking us up. One person was cooking dinner, the other person was cleaning up. And I had a lovely childhood. And so growing up in this house and being with Dan, I realized, oh, this isn't the life that we're living. So I had to dissolve and melt away all those expectations of what a partner really is. And now we're redefining our roles as husband and wife. Yeah, and what works for you. And it's so funny because it just sounds like Jack. He's the same. He's always talked about like delegating anything outside, you know, your pay rate, and always having a lot of support. And the same, like he's the most least domesticated, you know, person around the house. Dan hasn't even changed a light bulb.
No, I'm the one with the toolbox at home.
Yeah, me too.
And I'll catch the bugs.
Me too. I change all the light bulbs. I do all that stuff. Anyways, and it's funny because we say this as a joke because these are the expectations of what like the masculine role in a relationship does, and it doesn't have to be. It's like sometimes the work just needs to get done regardless of who's expected to do it. Right? Like right now, my role in these first few days here in Australia, can't believe I'm saying that, I'm in Australia. Ooh. Yeah. is the kids are with me. Like they're actually somewhere in your office right now. Yeah. Knowing that after these few days, Dan is on board to be taking care of them as well. So I get a little time off. Sometimes you just got to, you know, pay the bills, pay your dues in order to get that liberty. How do you guys create what I call an integrated life?
I think a lot of it does come down to some of the tactics, I guess, around like the buy back your time and making sure that you have a lot of support. So for us, we're obviously here in Sydney. My family are on the Gold Coast. Jack's family are in Melbourne. So we don't have any family around. So we've always had to look at how we can outsource and get support from, you know, nannies, and we're obviously doing childcare and stuff at the moment. I have a house clean that comes around once a week. So all of those things, you know, once you get to a point where you can afford to do those, I know that most people can't initially, but that should be a goal then to be able to free yourself up to do what your heart desires. Yes. So that's a whole other piece, you know, in the game of this. But yeah, I mean, particularly with travel, like you mentioned, you know, like Dan will give you a bit of time to do your own thing. Like when Jack and I travel, we quite often will take a nanny with us.
Yeah.
Or I also have like really good ways of finding good local nannies. Like we just had a couple of nannies when we were in California most recently who were amazing. Like they were the best. So that we've got that time to work on the business and obviously enjoy a bit of downtime and leisure and that sort of thing. But a lot of it does come back to like support and not being too proud, I guess, because like I also copped a lot of backlash initially when we started looking into nannies, because there is some feedback around there is you should be raising your child, you shouldn't be outsourcing someone raising your child. But this person's not raising my child. I still spend 25 to 30 hours a week with her. They're just doing the diapers, they're just doing the activities, they're just doing the feeding, like all of the monotonous things. When I spend time with her, it's intentional, it's one-on-one, and I'm lit up and I'm energized because I love just being with her as opposed to having to do all of the mum duties.
That's it. And I was going to say something, now I forget, but also understanding that the value of your time. So now that when you're with your kid, you're arguably more present because you don't have to worry about all the stuff that needs to get done. Like your to-do list shouldn't be on your brain. You're with your child. It was really hard for me to do that initially because I felt so guilty that I should be doing the laundry. I should be doing every drop off and pick up and all this stuff. This past spring was the first year I didn't sign my kids up for summer camp. We had our house manager do that. Yeah. I mean, it's like the toughest thing to do in the world of raising a child is putting kids into summer camps. Yeah. It's like a lottery. And I felt so guilty that and still to this day. But we have the boys with us. We're traveling now for a month. People keep asking us about education. Like, who's watching the kids? Like the best education is world schooling. That's what I genuinely believe. Okay, so we're talking about radical reinvention too. And I know that you've been through some interesting seasons in your life as of late. How much do you believe that those circumstances ended up building a strong foundation for your next level?
Well, I think every time that you're forced to go through like a radical change in life, it's an opportunity to be, I guess, like first kind of broken apart, but to rebuild into like a bigger, higher, more on purpose version of yourself. So there are always opportunities for like greatness on the other side, but when you're going through them, they are really tough. Now, some of the big major life changes I've been through, I guess, would be divorce, moving interstate, becoming a mom at 38. Yeah, that's when I said it. Marrying Jack, and now looking at pivoting my business, which, you know, over that period as well kind of needed to change too, because there was this whole old version of me that has had to be reinvented over time. But I think the biggest strength in being able to go through all of these major life changes at once, which, you know, therapists at the time said we normally see people who are going through one of these things, not like 5 things all at once. It was like pretty hectic. Just going for efficiency here. What set me up to be able to actually navigate all of this was the work that I did before going through the change. So I've always been really good in terms of being consistent with health and fitness and training. Like I was either doing F45 or strength training. You know, prior to going through the most radical part of the change, I was working with my own holistic health and wellness coach. So I was getting the accountability that I needed to start doing things like drinking water when I wake up and meditating and doing affirmations and like having a really clean, healthy diet and just like a total reset. Like I'm like, I just want to operate as like the best, most highest version of myself. So I worked with a coach for 3 months to do that. And this was just as sort of Jack and I were falling in love. And then our love story happened very quickly, that in that, you know, Ariella was conceived within like a month of us like really falling deeply into things. And then, like so much change obviously has happened since then, but I attribute being able to deal with and cope with so much life change at once as to how put together I guess I was before that happened. So it's like preparing for your next season, I guess, is about, you know, preparing now rather than like trying to like figure it out when you're stuck in it.
So you could argue that life circumstances happen to you or for you.
I believe for you. Like I'm a big person in like, I don't like a victim mentality. I do think that sometimes motherhood and hormones can throw us into that space.
Totally. And no, there's reasons and excuses.
But sometimes there's good reasons and excuses, like when you know, finding yourself waking up like a completely different person, fueled with hormones. But for the most part, I believe, you know, we are 100%, you know, the captains and the creators of our life and our circumstances. Like, shitty things can happen. And I've been through a lot of trauma. Like, I remember doing one of those online trauma scores where they give you a score out of 10. Mine's 8 out of 10 based on my upbringing and what I've been through. So there's a lot of trauma, but with that, people who know me go, gosh, with everything you've been through, it's so crazy that you turned out so successful, because like I would have seen you like in the gutter or something going the other way. And I think I attribute that to exactly what you said before. It's about seeing it's like what happens to me is like an opportunity to grow and change and thrive and, you know, conquer. And I think a lot of that comes from, there's a lot of us entrepreneurs out there who, a lot of people when we were growing up or teens or whatever it might have been, said that we would never amount to anything and we would never make it. And I know Dan is, you know, one of those too. And even that in itself is like, I'll show you, like it's a really good, it's probably not the best one because it's an external sort of validation motivator, and we should always find our own internal, you know, compass.
Totally.
But it does work. It does work to sort of stick it to people that, you know, you can survive adversity and come out the other side.
Well, you should. So people ask me if I'm writing a book, because Dan just wrote a bestseller. And I said, yeah, I'm going to write it. I do have a book already, but the book. And I said, I just don't think I've actually lived the experiences to be in that book yet, knowing that I need to go through life because everything is a lesson. And we think about the best lessons that we had in life come from where we failed, not succeeded. And you can't get to success without failure. What are your big life failures?
I mean, failures or probably just the really hard stuff, I would say, like the really challenging decisions. I would probably reframe that for me as decisions. So one big thing that I had to decide on that I guess we can call it a failure, although I don't think failed marriages are failures, they're lessons and you can learn from them. But let's say like, major life change. You know, I was in a relationship for 15 years prior to my current relationship, and I knew for some time that it wasn't meant to be any longer. And I could have quite easily stayed because I'm not a quitter and I'm very loyal and I want to, you know, stick things out, and I always will fight and try and make things work, but it just wasn't working anymore for me. Like I was losing myself, like I was anchored down. I knew I couldn't live the life that I was meant to live. Like I knew intuitively that I was meant to have this big, bold life. And I knew that I needed someone who could run alongside me with that and actually complement that. Either I was going to do it alone or find someone like Jack who, you know, could obviously complement me in that. But making that leap felt so selfish, to like choose me and to actually go out and free myself from this relationship that was holding me back, because I grew up always wanting other people to feel good and to not let people down or make them, you know,
like a trauma response
so
of not feeling worthy.
Yeah. And so anyone who kind of saw that transition at the time, who's known me for a long time, like I had so many women reach out to me on Instagram when it happened saying, thank you for doing what you've done, because you've now given me the confidence that I can leave a relationship that is no longer serving me. And these are people who are going through tough things. This is not just like, I don't want to work on the relationship anymore, so I'm looking for an easy way out. These are people who literally saw me as someone, as an example that could actually lead the way for them to actually go out and live life on their own terms and be free of like what they're in. And that was huge. Like, several messages came through at the time and I was like, wow, this is having like a ripple effect. Not that I wanted to see everyone breaking up, but it was like, it was just women finally going, you know what, like, I'm a person and I deserve to feel loved and I deserve to feel important and I deserve to be able to do things that I desire. And what's life to go through completely just looking after another person if you're not being able to look after yourself?
Yes. And I'm thinking too, in terms of failures, decisions, great, is that we need to go through these things. And we don't see it as a gift in the time. We're like, how is this circumstance a gift? When it could be like the worst case scenario. But if you look at it as an opportunity to heal yourself, in the journey of healing yourself, you give the gift for others to do that as well. So it's like the permission to heal. So these women, the permission to leave a bad relationship, or even like closing down a business, the permission for other people. You know what? This business isn't driving the revenue that I expected, and I've tried everything. Maybe it is time to shut it down. And these are those tough decisions that end up building that foundation to actually follow your heart and follow your dreams. You feel that?
Definitely. And I think that was the thing for these women, is it wasn't just like witnessing like seeing me leave, but seeing what I then went on to achieve and build, and seeing me end up in the life that they all heard me talking about, I envisioned.
Yeah.
So anyone who's known me for a long time, and like I was talking before about those journal prompts, knew that that was, you know, what I wanted for myself. And they're like, oh my God, like you achieved that.
You did it.
And then that empowers them to think, maybe I need to go and write down some things as well.
I can do it too. Yeah, there's little things that we share now that I get messages all the time, like this episode or this thing you said, or your guest said this, is like the little shift in their life that helped them go from, you think about it, if you have a 1,000-kilometer journey and you know your destination, if you shift it by 1% at the very beginning, you end up somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
And that's the shift you need. It doesn't have to be drastic.
Yeah.
But it has to be enough that it is your desire. You know where you want to be. You just got to do one or two little things at the very beginning. It ends up being this domino cascade effect.
Absolutely.
Eventually for you is like all at once.
Yeah.
You're like Band-Aids off, let's go.
And you can welcome the detours as well, like that 1% off, or, you know, like ending up somewhere you weren't meant. Like that's the thing, like life is full of surprises, and things that obviously happen to you happen for a reason. And sometimes something even better than what you could imagined is just like waiting around the corner for you. So you just got to be open to it. And I think that's the way that I live. Like people talk about being, you know, present, and I don't really feel like I plan or look too much into the future or even like into the past. Like it's really like, what could land this week?
Yeah. Anything.
And it's having the agility to be able to jump on what happens. That's where, you know, like I think people find a lot of success, is being open to opportunity and ready to go.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of like let God take the reins if you believe in God or spirit or whomever, right? Trust the process.
Yeah.
And also believe in yourself.
Yeah.
So we're coming up to a new year. And it's a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to come up with this new plan and to have this roadmap for their lives. What's some grace we can give the listeners into how to plan their next year for themselves and for their businesses?
I think the most important thing was the point that we spoke to earlier about really being intentional about what you truly desire and what you really, really want. And making sure that that's obviously like top of funnel or top of like the list of what you're wanting to achieve, and thinking about how you can actually make that a reality. I think we both recognize the advantages of like doing a vision board. I've seen some women doing some cool workshops where they all get together and they sit there and they cut all the things out of the magazines and make their vision boards together. So that's pretty cool too. But I think, so much of it is just being able to give yourself permission to sit and dream and like map it out. I think in order to have a successful year, and whether you do this now or in the new year or like midway through the year, that there's no pressure to actually have a plan by January 1.
No. Like I think there is in my mind, because Dan and I go on our annual retreats this time of year. The way I see it is you have to understand your true desire in life, regardless of what other people are expecting of you, regardless of your label or identity as a mother or a business owner. And you have to understand the person you need to become to fulfill that desire.
Yeah.
And equally as important is, who are the people you need in your life to help you achieve that? Because you can't get anywhere without that support.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
We have so many people in our lives, as do you, that just support you. I mean, the incredible women and people in this room as well. It's like you can't achieve it without these people. So who do you need to let go of or release? And who do you need to welcome in? Because that energy, these are the people that support that vision, because they want to be on that ride with you. How did you do that? I'm sure you had to, coming out of a marriage, you had to let go of probably a lot of relationships too.
I was actually quite lucky. I handled it very amicably. So I've kept all of our like mutual friends and a lot of the friends, and things are on good terms, which was again like like if someone was to come to me and say, how do you end things mutually and deal without lawyers and like all that sort of thing. Like I managed to navigate through that.
That's the
pretty
dream.
Well. Yeah. So like that's another lesson in itself that, that I've learned and navigated well. Yeah. But I think more importantly, when you talk about setting up those support structures, my life was on the Gold Coast. My friends are on the Gold Coast. Since coming here, I have struggled a little bit to actually set up those support structures. Yeah. Like obviously like the main things are finding household help and help with childcare and that sort of thing, which I've nailed. Reconnecting with other female entrepreneurs and people that I know down here and trying to do the girls' lunches and all that sort of thing. That's kind of been a work in progress as well. But building out that community, that's like the next frontier for me.
That's it.
So for me, like going into the new year, I guess my own strategy is about like pivoting into being able to create this community, to be running events, to be doing retreats, like all that sort of stuff, like having a bigger, bolder version of what I want to do next year, moving more away from like the PR and branding side into something that feels more intentional for me, into what I really needed over these last 3 years, so I can give back and give that to others.
I love it. And what was the courage you needed to believe in yourself in order to do this?
It's an interesting one. I've been doing a lot of work on this, to be honest. I think my life pre-motherhood, a lot of my self-esteem and self-worth came from being this person who was, you know, obviously kicking goals in business and feeling very successful and very visible and doing podcast interviews and being on stage. And like, there's a lot of like feel-good moments, right, where your confidence just feels so solid. A lot of it was coming from external sources, which I didn't realize at the time. I'd lived my whole life that way. Since becoming a mom, and as you know, like it's such a major life change, all of that just went poof, along with my community and my friends, and like, so like a lot of that went away. So for me, I've actually been on a journey of having to find that self-confidence and that internal sort of validation and being proud of yourself, and kind of reprogram that from a healthier place of within. I would say that I'm in the middle of doing that right now. I've always been a confident person, and I can definitely be I'm an extrovert, like I can, you know, I can mask it really well. But if I'm being completely honest, it's been a process to actually...
What does that look like?
It looks like really understanding, you know, who you are, having compassion, having grace, not letting other people dictate or judge or shame you, like really just having your own rules and kind of, like letting go of a lot of societal expectations. And I guess the other piece that we talked about before, like building like a kick-ass support network around you that's going to help you build yourself into the best version. Obviously, a big part of it too is your partnership, you know, like Jack has been alongside me in this whole journey, and he's watched, you know, his wife change so much through this period. But knowing that, you know, you have that support, but also someone who is going to hold you accountable and hold a mirror up to you and be like, you know, you need to go and do your work.
And the best partner will do that for you.
Yes.
The best partner, if this is your spiritual partner, if this is even a best friend or your life partner, they are to bring out the best in you.
Yeah.
And not to bring you down. And the problem with like families and sometimes close relationships we've had forever is they've seen you as a child. They've seen you in the high school days or college days.
Yeah.
And their comfort for them in maintaining that relationship is you maintaining at the same level that they are at.
Yeah, they're holding on to that.
Back.
Yeah, they're holding on to that version of you. They don't want you to evolve and elevate and change, because to them that feels like they've lost you.
Exactly.
And so having a partner that will give you a bit of tough love,
100%.
which I love. I've said it to Jack many times. I'm like, you know, I felt like I used to just get through everything in life and no one would really hold me accountable, and no one would, you know, everyone would take my shit kind of thing. And I'm like, you're the first person who actually holds the mirror up. And I've said, like, you're literally like my greatest teacher. Like, it's tough at times, and I can feel a little bit sorry for myself maybe a few minutes after receiving some feedback that I might think hurt my feelings. But then it doesn't take long for me to switch into no, this is like, again, like an opportunity to actually do something about this to build myself into a better version and who I need to be. Yeah,
we were talking about this before recording, how I said, even 2 years ago, if this trip was on our list, I would have been so overwhelmed with the idea of traveling with the kids and with my business. I wouldn't have even conceived the idea of scheduling these types of interviews. But I did so much work too. And I became the version of me that could handle this. And I remember this moment probably 2 years ago. Boys were late for school. We're jumping in the car. I was got to drive them. And I was like honking the horn. I was so angry and all this stuff was happening. And I just said to myself, Renee, who do you need to be able to handle this situation? Who do you need to become? It's like, be that person right now. And I was like, breathing, okay. And every time I found myself in those moments, I just said to myself, be the person who can deal. Be the person who can deal with this particular circumstance. And once you get through, it's a joke. You get through, it's like, that was nothing. So what if they were late for school or they missed the bus? Like, it's not the end of the world. We put so much pressure on having things so perfectly lined up all the time. We don't actually schedule fluidity into our calendar. Like, let's take right now, for example. 22 minutes ago, I was supposed to be at Sea Life with my kids. Guess where they are now? With Rosie at the zoo. Probably living their best life. And like, I don't really care to go to Sea Life, and I was just doing it for them, but to be with them. And so we also have to allow that grace in our life.
Absolutely.
That things
Nothing
are going to
ever goes
happen
according to plan.
No, but also everything is by design.
Yeah.
And there's a bigger lesson in all of this. And everything just ends up being better if you believe that it can be better. And I know sometimes we're in the thick of it, like people that are going through divorce and maybe they're having really raunchy experiences. They're like, how dare you even say that? Look inwards, right? Turn your edges inwards. What is it about this circumstance that sucks so much for you? Because there's people like you who maybe did not have that experience and are also divorced. So we think we connect the two. It's like everybody I talked to had the worst experience of their life. But does it have to be that way? No.
This is so similar to when I first became a mother and I joined all the Facebook mothers groups to try and I eventually had to leave all of them because I just found that the noise of like what everyone was saying, and I was kind of reading into like, well, what's she going to be like when she's 2 weeks old, and what's she going to be like? I was literally trying to like future pace and like work out like what was the next shit show that I was basically going to end up in. And I found that with Ariella, a lot of those things never even happened. So I was like working myself up to expect all of this hard stuff. And I mean, like, even at the time, all the other parents are saying to us, oh, you know, you're never going to sleep again. And like, everyone was putting such a down.
Or the best one is enjoy it while they're young, because these times are fleeting. I was like, that puts so much pressure on us to be just that for our kids.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I just got to the point where I was like, I just can't listen to anyone's advice anymore. I'm going to do me. I'm going to intuitively go into this, and I'm just going to see what kind of child I have. And she has literally been an angel.
Because you, with your energy, show up and you're like, I'm just going to be you for you.
Yeah.
And me for me, without those expectations.
Yeah. The
moment that you can show up as a parent, as a partner, as a leader, just genuinely being yourself, that energy is so contagious. And people actually find ease in that. So same with kids. Like, I was so rigid when my boys were born because they were so close in age and so much was happening that my energy was just wreaking anxiety. And those kids are just like sponges.
Yeah.
It's like, if I was a calmer mom, the best gift to them would have just been that. Nothing else matters. Partners, kids, they just want a happy mom.
Yeah.
And guess who we put last? Ourselves.
Yeah.
And we should be putting ourselves first.
Absolutely.
All the time.
So if anything, that could be someone's New Year's resolution.
Yeah, put yourself first. What does that mean?
Back to the top of the list.
There we go. Okay, I love this. Do you have any last little things that you want to wrap this up with?
Probably just to say that I think reinvention and going through new seasons, it's the most radical act of self-love that you can give yourself.
I love it. Okay, so when I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
I believe that it is someone who can prioritize themselves and see that as the best gift they can give to everyone around them, as opposed to doing what everyone expects of them. I think that even sums up this conversation quite well.
I don't know. I can go to sea life with my kids. Yeah. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm so pumped to have met you. I think you're obviously a little bit further along in the journey than me, so just really want to thank you for being there and for all the content that you put out. And you know, I know how much work goes into doing that, you know, particularly on top of the schedule that you have, but it definitely helps people like me in knowing that there's others out there that we can learn from. And really appreciate you.
We're in this together.